It's 718, which is July 18th. I'm watching the CBS Sunday mornings, even though it's Monday. And I'm listening really clearly to the healthcare professionals at Nyu Langone speak to one another. And the actual scientific community that has their level of degree in hand with some graduation ceremony that I never attended, they're speaking back and forth in a volley about how to diagnose this long COVID, which there is no diagnostic test. So then they go through the process in a like no duh kind of a way, considering if there was no medical field whatsoever, if we were in some kind of a vacuum in this area of the universe, which is how I always look at it, because I really don't find any of them very helpful at the moment. I'm like, without further testing, their guesswork doesn't, again, for me, I feel there's either some kind of protozoa or amoebic whatever in this nanotech 20 years in after they did the initial funding in Wall Street that really frightens me, with changing the magnetic spectrum. We went from 6 channels on the television with an antenna to digital packages of hundreds. Linda and Lou's TV goes up to channel 999 from 1. That broad range is really frightening because they coded something in there. Access panels, back channels, all sorts of stuff. That's frightening to me when it comes to the astrophysiological, astroanatomical, and if you think of that net of energy around the body, and then the dots that hold the geospatial example, and then the way that those dots signal the human anatomy in order to make it come alive, let's say. And then you bring that down to the intracellular. It's really frightening. Along with the uptick in these long chain cholesterols, which just feel like some kind of fatty tissue, like an introduced fatty tissue strategy. And the amoeba and protozoa are more like a signaling agent, or there's a capsid, some kind of double helix capsid, changing the programming from the inside, which is even more frightening. It's just the reservoir that's whatever. So I'm watching, and they're like, okay, so there's no tests for this long COVID by all of this medical equipment and money, research, and advance for these facilities. But yet people are getting sick and dying. And then they have long-term effects and nobody knows anything. So I'm really concerned about the cholesterol strategies, to be honest. I switched over to a medium chain oil as opposed to a long chain oil. Again, I feel like my kidneys are being attacked. And here's the other thing. I'm in such a highly vulnerable classification because there is no xenophobe as a possibility for organ transplant for my person. I'm not Rh positive. I'm just not. Some of these people that practice medicine and they just keep practicing till they get it right, or they practice till the scientific community has enough people that they're like, yeah, I think that's what it is, and they're not really sure. They have the advantage of 90% of the population to knock off and do tissue like transfers and organ transfers. And then they can even reach into the animal population if they so were allowed to by whatever the gods allow in this area, which I've heard they've done pig valves and all sorts of stuff. I don't have that luxury. I'm Rh negative. Means I can't rely on 90% of the population if my vital organs go down, and I can't rely on the animal population to sustain me if I sustain damage to my organs. That means that I have a high priority for keeping my vital organs and the communicable disease and the infectious rate and the reservoir down to like minimum as possible. But yet I can't even get like, do I need and I'm thinking about this morning. I'm like, did I pick up maybe a parasite? Like, how do I even test for that when I can't even get a doctor? I mean, hopefully tomorrow when I go, she'll actually be there and she'll be able to figure something out or send some kind of panel of tests of what I need. But do I have like all my faith like banked on her? Absolutely not. I haven't met one doctor that's actually like been worth their medical degree yet. So here we go. This is what the scientific community that speaks to the couch potato sounds like in trying to explain this COVID thing that came out of nowhere.
Can you diagnose long COVID on a blood test?
No.
X-ray?
No.
CAT scan?
No.
MRI?
No.
Brain scan?
No.
Physical exam?
No.
So you can imagine how that would be disconcerting to somebody who has some symptoms.
Yes, indeed. The scientific community needs to quickly understand what's going on. It needs to quickly make some criteria, some diagnostic rules.
Here at NYU Langone Health, where I'm a professor of medicine, Dr. Leora Horwitz has gone from treating patients during the worst of the pandemic to searching for a way to diagnose and treat long COVID. Dr. Horwitz is helping to guide a $1 billion study run by the National Institutes of Health. It's called Recover, and its goal is to learn why so many people who contract COVID-19 are reporting long-term symptoms.
I've been in research for 25 years. I have never seen a study of this scale and this scope start in such a short amount of time.
Why do you think this is taking off quicker than usual?
Because COVID is an emergency.
Consider this. The Centers for Disease Control reports more than half of all Americans have been infected with COVID-19, and as many as 1 in 5 infected adults have experienced a symptom suggestive of long COVID. That's tens of millions. Here are a few things we do know. The more severe and prolonged the initial experience with COVID, the greater the risk of long COVID. Being vaccinated lowers the risk of severe illness and the risk of long-term effects. But more than 2 years into the pandemic, researchers still have very few solid answers.
So I'm supposed to believe this vaccination theory when they can't even they don't have a diagnostic test set that's accurate. The symptoms are all over the map. They say later on like there's like 200 possibilities of symptoms. It's like COVID's like this umbrella term almost, but it's more an individualized biological attack. I don't know whose strategy it is.
The big surprise in COVID has been people who were never even that sick in the acute phase that are still having persistent problems.
The NIH's Dr. Walter Koroshetz is at the helm of the Recover study. For Dr. Koroshetz, who specializes in diseases of the nervous system, the mysteries of long COVID present a familiar dilemma.
I'm a neurologist. A lot of the illnesses that we treat, we don't have a treatment. Our job is to kind of help people get, as best they can get through their illness.
That seems to me like he falls under the category of Havana syndrome, which is like almost like that. If you thought of a biodome, only a half of a sphere, like a hemisphere, over a human stick figure, and those dots and points sending energy signals to the anatomy. But the nervous system, for some reason, is not, almost like a computer and a robot, and it no longer is signaling and picking up on the signals correctly. I mean, there's other strategies that they've used here that are really debilitating, like the fact that they try to separate the subcutaneous with a layer of fat from the muscle. And then that subcutaneous fat layer, like the one that causes that puckering and that weird leg thing, and then the veins and the capillaries to start bursting underneath. I mean, the translucent skins, like myself, it's really clear to see on a patient that has varicose veins or even spider veins from afar with translucent skin, because it comes straight to the surface and you can see the discoloration. So that's really concerning. But also, like, Linda did not have to worry about this cellulite problem in her day and age. That's a biological attack and strategy that happened in New York through either the water or the food or these radiological effects within my life frame. I was more affected by it than she was, but there was no warning. There's been no explanation where this uptick in adipose tissue arrived from, or who's purposely trying to disfigure the human population through saturated fats and all sorts of strategies.
That skill is necessary now more than ever.
Researchers are honing in on some possible causes of long COVID, including long-term damage from the initial illness, such as inflammation in the heart, lungs, and blood vessels, disruption of the microbiome, the trillions of bacteria in our gut that have wide-ranging effects on our health.
These are the sorry excuses of the doctor population in New York. Eric, from the American Foster family, I just want to let you know, why can't I get healthy? This is the level of doctor and teaching other doctors and the information that they're going off of to keep me healthy and safe. And I have 10% population, like I have vital organ failure. It is harder to find a donor and something that could prevent or save my life. So prevention is key for me, but yet I'm stuck in 90% of the population that hasn't got a clue how to handle my health anyway.
The immune system mistakenly attacking healthy tissue after the virus is gone, and an immune reaction to remnants of the COVID virus that can remain in the body months after an initial infection. These last two theories point to similarities with other infections, such as Lyme and Epstein-Barr, which NYU Langone's Dr. Leora Horwitz says can be difficult to diagnose, just like long COVID.
I want to be very clear about this. The symptoms and the disease are absolutely real. We are failing right now as physicians in figuring out how to identify that and how to characterize it.
She said they're failing. It's nice that there's finally some acknowledgement. Not that I expect everybody to jump on board with that, but listen, you want to play doctor and play God with 90% of the population, and you're able to rearrange organs and tissues and save people and be like really like great people. Great, okay, but there's 10% of us that, well, I mean, I'm one person in the 10% that's not okay with letting them play around with my health. I'm just not. I'm not one of the 90% that has a backup system in case they fail, which they're already admitting that they're doing.
I can imagine that the millions of people out there who for years have been told, oh, your chronic fatigue syndrome, your fibromyalgia, your chronic Lyme, it's in your head. Yeah. They've been told that incorrectly.
Yes.
They're watching this and thinking, see?
That's right.
When I interviewed Camille,
I, at the moment, have high platelets and low erythrocytes. They can't figure out why. They have, and as far as WPC panel or leukocyte panel, I'm hoping maybe tomorrow she'll draw blood and she'll be able to run something. But I haven't gotten straight answers. Here's them talking about the electric grid and this new heat uptick.
Draw on that electric demand. It looks like we may have just switched over to generator power.
A heat wave across the south continues to put the Texas power grid in danger.
West of Houston to get back above 100. He did it again.
Jimmy Kimmel was on vacation, but he left a famous YouTube scientist in charge of his show last night. A decision he's probably regretting.
Hey, what in the world? That's my office. Well, my attorneys will be in touch. Don't you laugh, Guillermo. You'll still be there when I get back.
This morning's eye opener is presented.
Okay, so now here's them going to Europe, who's having this extreme weather. London's up around 100 and something supposedly. The weather's shifting and changing. But again, for me, it goes back to radiological terms in this broadcast, this high amount of radio frequency between the radio, being able to get, I mean, here, there are people who can get radio stations from Korea here in New York. And it's not the only station or country that they're able to get this broadcast. So it's really frightening when you think of how many channels are open, how many people are receiving, because how many people are here from there, rather than going there and staying there. They're here trying to listen to what's going on there. And then you've got the TV stations. I mean, when you look at a TV guide, here's Verizon's Fios lineup. Here are all, it used to be 6 stations. Here's how many, you want to know how many stations? I mean, I don't even, I've lost count. Here's packages that they offer. Oh, and then there's a whole backside of it as well. I mean, so they went from 6 antenna receivable stations to a digital package. So you want to know what a possibility, here's a theory, possibility is that all of this digital package and having to have however many channels this is heating up the planet in radiological ways that are really frightening, and nobody's talking about it, nobody's trying to change it, because there's too much money linked to it, too many jobs linked to it. Doesn't make it okay that by convection we're frying from the inside out, or cooking from the inside out, causing all sorts like DVTs and all sorts of stuff, blood clots, from uneven cooking.
To Europe, where this week could see Britain's hottest day ever recorded, with high temperatures potentially reaching at least 103 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not just above normal, that is 30 degrees above normal. The same heat wave is already being blamed for extreme temperatures and widespread wildfires across other parts of Europe. You're looking at the pictures, and scientists say this is all part of climate change caused by human activity.
My guess, if I'm going to do a scientific guess, because I don't have a scholarly institute that I trust to house any of my whatevers, would be that it's something to do with all this broadband broadcast and communications that is causing really dangerous radioscopic stereo field on Earth, and it's heating up by multiple sources. And that's not even taking in some of the other new habits that the humans have decided that they need as luxuries.
Roxana Saberi is tracking Europe's hot weather and the damage it's causing.
Wildfires raging across southwest France have scorched around 35,000 acres and forced more than 16,000 people to flee. In Spain, the scene seems similarly apocalyptic. Neighboring Portugal remains on high alert after fires were fanned by drought that's hit at least 96% of the country and a heat wave reaching a record of nearly 117 degrees. Here and in Spain, authorities say more than 1,000 people have died from the recent heat. And now Britain is bracing for its record high of at least 100.
I read one of the people on Facebook. I don't do the whole whatever, but there is this one person on Facebook that I really appreciate. He mentioned the other day about coherent and incoherent within the electric magnetic field, that if it's some form of, and I don't want to misquote him, but pretty much if it's stable light, it's at a range of whatever. But if you change the magnetism of those same particles, you get a laser and it could burn a hole in you. So for me at this point, I'm thinking out loud about the amount of, we went from 6 antenna stations for a television, and it being a privilege to have that level of communication and that level of and entertainment when it was available, to around the clock, which is the utility to measure time in these parts, where it's accessible on demand now, all the time. And if it's not available, you can pay to have it made available to you. And that level of abuse of privilege seems to be having catastrophic effects on the air around the anatomy itself, and on environmental here in the United States of America and in Europe.
3 degrees on Tuesday. So hot, the UK's National Weather Service has issued its first ever red warning for extreme heat, meaning there's a risk to life. Scientists say heat waves have become more frequent and more intense and last longer.
Climate change has everything to do with the extreme weather that we're seeing at the moment, and it's human-induced climate change. It's not a natural variation.
Kirsty McCabe is a meteorologist at the UK's Royal Meteorological Society. Is weather like this going to become the norm?
Unfortunately, yes, that's exactly where we are heading at the moment. If we don't do something now and take drastic action, we'll continue to see these things happening.
Here in London, people are trying to cool off in any way they can. This country is more used to the clouds and rain than to this kind of heat. In fact, most homes don't even have air conditioning. Neither do most schools. Some have canceled classes, and people are being told to avoid the trains because the heat could buckle the tracks. Glad?
I'll actually take it. Thanks so much, Roxana Saberi.
Today, in much of the central U.S., with several areas expecting more record-breaking temperatures. Meteorologist Jim Cantore with our partners at the Weather Channel is tracking the global heat connection. Jim, good morning. How does it all tie together?
Yeah, good morning, Vlad. It's all about ridges and troughs. We have a ridge over the central United States here, and we have a big ridge over the UK and much of Western Europe over there. And there you can see it. This thing extends pretty much all the way from Portugal and Spain up into the UK. And remember, London is at 51 degrees north latitude. Okay, so you come back at 51 degrees, and there's no city in the United States that's that far north. So this is a very big deal this far north. The all-time record high in the UK was 102 degrees in Cambridge in 2019. Guess what? We're talking about highs that could reach 106 degrees. They are painting the train tracks white to try and keep them from buckling. This is amazing. I mean, look at that, 102 in Paris, 105 degrees as we take it down toward Madrid. We've already lost 1,000 lives in Portugal and Spain already. Here's our ridge, which has continued to grip the central United States. It is only going to keep these temperatures at 100 degrees. This is going to be day 15 tomorrow coming up for Dallas. All right, they got 14 straight days, almost day 25 for the year of 100 degrees or higher. this heat expands east and north.
As far as I'm concerned, all of this could have been avoidable. But nowadays, everybody has podcasts and whatever the heck else they're up to. I don't understand why anybody with this level of concern on the horizon and on the forefront, if the measures that they've taken, the steps that they've taken, these were measurable results of the future. And the people leading the future took these steps anyway to make some money, to make some economy, to make some power for themselves, to make some new society, some new leagues. This is a problem. This is a problem where within the anarchy section, it's unacceptable. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.